lose my shit. Hey everybody, it's Bea, and if you didn't know, I am on a mission to lose 100 pounds. And in this video, I'm finally here to tell you the tale of what happened when I decided to quit added sugar for 22 days. As many of you know, that experiment was supposed to be 30 days, but my body decided to betray me, and I got violently ill, which is why I'm sitting here talking to you sounding like a mix between DW from Arthur and a goose honking at a camera. But you know, I can't really pick when my larynx decides to keep it together. So here we are, and buckle up for listening to the grating sound of my voice, and it will only get worse the more that I keep talking. So let's try to get through this together. But I didn't want to keep you guys waiting anymore because I know that you've been waiting for a while, and that's annoying. And technically I didn't eat added sugar for 30 days, but the last week of that, seeing as I couldn't keep down any food, ethically we have to exclude that last chunk of data. But anyways, this video is going to be an overview of the whole thing, my thoughts, my feelings, anything that I couldn't include in short form content. So first off, because there was a little bit of confusion, I quit added sugar. I didn't quit sugar entirely. There's natural sugars in foods. I quit anything added. So there's lots of reasons that sugars are added. It goes from anything from making it just a little bit more addictive, so you keep popping those chips, to giving the food a longer shelf life, preserving it, to giving it a different texture or emulsifying, or And before some of you get your pitchforks ready, this isn't about demonizing sugar or restricting to a level that's not sustainable. It's simply about being more informed about what I'm putting in my body, because I did not realize how much sugar is just sprinkled in willy-nilly to a lot of this shit in the grocery store. Because apparently 73% of items in the grocery store have added sugar. And it could be very sneaky on the labels, going by over 262 different names. So that's a fun thing to navigate. Oh, and by the way, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a doctor, I'm just a fat person trying to be less fat. I watched one podcast. I'll link it in the description if you're curious and you want to listen to more sciencey people tell you about things. This is just my experience. But disclaimers out of the way, let's talk about the guidelines that I set for myself. First of all, and the most obvious, no added sugar. And I included things like honey, artificial sweeteners, syrups, sugar alternatives. Second thing was trying to eat more whole, unprocessed foods, because technically, things like Cheez-Its don't have added sugars. But what they did have was a ton of ingredients that I couldn't pronounce, wasn't sure really what it was, and I'm like, shit, this is just supposed to be a cheese cracker, guys. Why has it got 40 ingredients? So I opted to kind of stay away from foods like that, but obviously not perfect. I still ate some processed foods. I just tried to limit them. Oh, and also on a weirdly controversial note, I ate fruit. Fruit does naturally have sugar, but fruit is okay because while it does have fructose, which fun fact about that is there's no biochemical reaction in the human body that requires it. So it's just kind of a for funsy thing. Well, fruit does have fructose. It also contains fiber and antioxidants and vitamins, and fiber's pretty cool because it encapsulates the nutrients and is this little cool vehicle that brings all that stuff to your microbiome in your gut, which ends up being pretty dope for your body. But like I mentioned, it's more about being a little bit more informed about what I'm putting in my body. I just want to have a dessert and know that I'm having a dessert, rather than someone adding sugar into my canned vegetables and me consuming it without knowing. Even though it might be a pretty small amount, it just adds up over time, and reducing fructose intake reduces systemic inflammation in the body, which can help a whole lot of things. And your girl has some problems. Not just physically, but my gut's a nightmare. Anxiety is a problem. I was just curious. I also did very minimal research before taking on this endeavor. I literally just listened to a podcast and I was like, we're gonna do that. Which admittedly, day one was very overwhelming. I just want to clarify that I'm not going to be throwing away this food, but it's a good way to visualize all of the stuff that has sneaky sugar in it, and also kind of separate it from me so I know what I can grab quickly and not have to look at the label every 5 seconds. Okay, we are currently just 5 minutes into the first day and already ran into a snag. I'm freaking confused. So, found these Olive Garden croutons in the back of the pantry. I was pretty sure what I was gonna find when I looked at the label, but to my absolute surprise, on the label it says total sugars 0 grams, included 0 grams of added sugar. But then, when you look at the ingredients, sugar is literally listed. And see, this is the part where I start losing my mind. Because What does that mean? That means that they're outright lying. It's seemingly impossible because, like, how honest do these labels actually have to be? But apparently, which I didn't know, is if like in the serving size of the item, if it has less than like 0.5 grams of added sugar, they don't have to list it, even though it's like clearly in the ingredients, which is fine. Like, okay, it's an abysmal amount, but at some point, like if you're having multiple servings of something, that sugar adds up to something. Which point is that? For example, like Tic Tacs. If you look on the nutrition label of those hoes, it's zeros all across the board. No nutritional value, no sugar, even though they are entirely sugar. But because the serving size is one Tic Tac, it don't count. And if you're sitting there like, B, that's silly, like who's gonna slam an entire case of Tic Tacs? Well, tell that to 7-year-old me because she slammed those nasty orange ones like nobody's business. By the way, I tried those again as an adult. They are not good at all. There was like a certain point in my childhood where I just remember consuming a lot of toxic waste and it was normally like orange. Like those orange Tic Tacs and Tang, that like weird orange drink that was promoted by orangutans. Anyways, I'm going on a tangent, but that's a fun fact about me if you care. Okay, it's nearly 2. I've been spiraling all morning about this whole no sugar thing and I have not eaten yet. So let's fix ourselves some eggs and radishes because I don't know what else. But not only was it difficult to figure out what to eat, I had like a raging headache and I was completely irritable. Like, I don't know if it was just like from the overwhelm, but like I was a dick. Like poor Steven was just like doing the dishes, helping out around the house. And I was like, if that motherfucker clanks one more pot or one more pan, I'm gonna lose my shit. And then I apologized and I was like, we're gonna need to have like a truce. By the way, Steven decided to not partake in the experiment with me. He obviously ate the dinners that I made, but he was still consuming a lot of sugar in front of me. Hey!
These are going to my office.
You summoner. Which you think that I would care more about, but like day 1 was the anomaly. Somehow the second day the switch flipped. All of a sudden willpower entered the chat and I was like, I'm gonna do this. And I'm probably gonna mess up along the way, but here we go. I woke up feeling lighter, less bloated, just ready to take on the challenge. I immediately went to the gym and worked out. And I'd love to sit here and like tell you that this was the hardest thing I ever did and I really overcame some demons and all of this stuff, but it was actually surprisingly easy. Like I had random every once in a while cravings, but they were more like a knee-jerk reaction to me seeing something. For example, like on Pinterest, I saw someone making tapioca pudding and all of a sudden I was like, I need tapioca pudding in my mouth hole immediately. Like who craves tapioca pudding? Nobody. It's literally just because I saw it and like there was that instant of wanting that, but that didn't last past a scroll. Same thing with candy that lined the checkout, you know? Like you see it and I'm like, damn, Kit Kat sounds hella good right now. But all I have to do is not buy the Kit Kat and I was fine. You know, it was nothing that lingered really. I did go through mild trials and tribulations like social gatherings. My mom invited us over for dinner. I couldn't eat what they were having. I just schlepped some leftovers over and it was fine. And then of course my period, which I was ravenously hungry and I was craving everything, but everything I was craving was more salty and not sweet. And I just fed myself more, let myself snack. I did eat pretty indulgent meals, you know, like high fat, high salt, stuff like that, but no real sugar cravings. One of the big things is I didn't eat out at all. That's mainly because there's just more control. I cooked at home the entire time. And in that way I had a bit of an advantage because, you know, I'm someone who likes to cook, even though sometimes I don't feel like it. I like the process. I know how to make things. And I have recipes that I could cook in like 30 minutes. Plus I had like a freezer meal that I just warmed up one time. I could definitely see this being really difficult for someone who doesn't cook or doesn't have time to cook. And also I noticed my natural eating pattern is more of like 2 bigger meals a day and a snack usually, but that's normal. That wasn't something that I was changing for this experiment. It was just how I naturally eat. But my biggest tip is probably just shopping the perimeter of the grocery store because that's where you're gonna find like your whole foods, your fruits, your veggies, your meat, your dairy, things that are more like minimally processed. I definitely did eat processed foods. Like I had tortilla chips, tortillas. I found some breads that didn't have added sugar. A lot of them did. I'm not gonna get super into the foods that I ate just because I literally chronicled every single thing that I put in my my mouth on my shorts. And I'll leave a link to the playlist in the description if you're curious, but that details like day to day everything that I ate. But anything that I could make at home, I did. Sauces, for example, I learned to make naan, which is fantastic. So easy. It's just Greek yogurt and flour, and I'll leave that recipe in the description as well. Okay, so let's talk about the times that I messed up. I'm sure that I messed up more than this, but this is what I know of. One time I did knowingly. Steven got a fancy hot sauce that was like $30. It was some kind of truffle hot sauce, and it had a gram of added sugar, and I tasted it, which it just tasted like normal hot sauce, so it was kind of a waste, but it was a $30 hot sauce. I had to experience that. But also, the second thing that I messed up on is I did not realize that iodinized salt contained dextrose. And granted, it's one of those situations where like it has like less than 0.5 grams per serving, but like a serving size of salt is 1/4 of a teaspoon. Now it's really pretty trivial, but like it goes back to the thing of like at what point does it add up to something? And also, I never thought to check the salt. Why would I think that that would have sugar in it of all things? It's just a mineral. But apparently iodinized salt has dextrose in it to help bind the iodine to the salt. But I was of course consuming a lot of salt, so I don't know. It's just worth mentioning. I'm just trying to be like as fully transparent about my whole process as possible because I try to treat these things as an experiment, so I'm just letting you know. I don't know if anyone even cares. But I was really actively trying not to consume any added sugar and stick to the parameters that I set myself. So now to the bread and butter of this experiment, the results. But first I'm going to tell you a couple of disclaimers. I want to tell you like all of the other things that I had going on that could have contributed to these results. First and foremost, back in November, I quit 2 medications that are pretty notorious for people gaining weight. I quit my hormonal birth control, and I also quit the SSRI that I was on, which was Zoloft. I'm not shaming anyone for being on any type of medication because people need medications for all sorts of things, but I'm simply mentioning it because I noticed, having started the Zoloft especially like a year ago, I was having a tremendously hard time losing weight. How I ate this time wasn't too different from previous attempts in 2023 where the scale was just like not budging. And anytime I wasn't actively trying to lose weight, I noticed the scale just creeping up and up and up and up and up. Second of all, I worked out on top of trying to clean up my diet. About 3 times a week I did some kind of weightlifting. I also tried to move every single day, whether that was like taking a walk, going to water aerobics, yoga, even if it was like very minimal, like it wasn't really like a strenuous workout, I just tried to move more, so that should be noted. I did track calories like the first week, and then I fell off doing that because shit's boring. And I find it a little bit harder to track calories when I cook because I freestyle a lot. The first week I did track calories, the rest of the experiment I did not. I also do have PCOS and a binge eating disorder, but I have not binged in like a year. Just extra tidbits. I don't know what to add. I'm just trying to be like as thorough as possible. So that being said, let's get into the results in the form of pictures, measurements, and the scale. So I began this challenge weighing 262.2 pounds and I ended it tipping the scales at 244.8 pounds. That's a difference of 17.4 pounds, which is a huge number for the span of 22 days. But I think a good chunk of that number is water weight and bloat, as well as some fat loss. And I definitely expect it to slow down over time. But here's how that weight loss translates into the measurements. I lost pretty evenly over my whole body, but the most came off my midsection, where I lost 3.5 inches from the fattest bit of my belly. Thank goodness, because she was getting a little out of control. If you notice, I do measure a little bit differently. I pick the points that are commonly measured, like, you know, the bicep, but also I do a second measurement around the fattest bit of my arm as well. I think it doesn't really matter as long as you're measuring the same points under the same conditions each time. And in my mind, the more data, the better. But here is that same bit of info for people who use centimeters. Cannot relate. Let's go ahead and get into the before and after pictures. I'm not seeing a huge physical difference, probably due to losing inches pretty evenly, but overall my body appears to be less droopy and a little bit more compact. Don't get me wrong, I'm excited about these results and I notice a change, but it's more like I can't really put my finger on what's different rather than an overwhelming transformation that you definitely know what's different, which honestly I prefer. My body seemed to respond to it really well on a number of different levels, as far as actually losing weight, mentally just feeling better. It felt not difficult at all, which definitely had me questioning myself multiple times. I was like, am I even doing this right? But as far as I could tell, yeah. I didn't feel deprived at all other than like wanting to eat out. Like the whole point of these experiments and putting like a deadline on it isn't to quit after the deadline. I think that confuses a lot of people. And I mean, like it does like make for a catchy title, like in X amount of days I did this. It's just mainly to experiment long enough to see if it works, because like you're adhering to a set of rules for that time. So it forces you to problem solve and realize like, oh, I can do this to make this easier. I could make meals ahead of time and freeze them to make the days that I don't want to cook easier. It just kind of gives you those tools, and also making it like a 30-day challenge or something. If you're someone like me who has a binge eating disorder, and sometimes putting restrictions on things like telling myself, oh, I'm never going to eat sugar ever again, makes you want to binge sugar. But if it's 30 days, a week, whatever, it doesn't feel so final. And obviously the goal for anything is balance. So like there's never gonna be like no sugar or processed foods ever again. It's more of realizing I don't have to have those things absolutely every single day. I can actually do a lot of good for myself if I don't. But anyway, to wrap this all up, I definitely see myself continuing doing this, just obviously not so strictly. There's gonna be days where I go out to eat or I have dessert. Like it's gonna be more of like a 80-20 thing. For example, it was just my birthday. I had a scoop of Rocky Road ice cream and a scoop of baseball nut, which is like this ice cream with a raspberry swirl and cashews in it. But what was weird is like I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought that I would. I don't know if it was still because I was like, you know, still getting over my sickness. The jury's out on that one, if it would have been different if I didn't get thrush from antibiotics, but you know, whatever. But it's easy, and it doesn't have to be an all or none thing. If you could cut it out in some places, cool. If you don't want to, also cool. And I also just want to thank you so much for watching, and I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!